framework and in a context.
I think y'all can hear me.
Because the message that I have today
I hope y'all can hear me.
only came to me because of the context in which I look at what is going on around us. And let me just say this, that Sister Keffa told me that it was in a newspaper that I wouldn't be here today. So I say whatever those forces are about is why I am here today. Okay. I mean, there was never any discussion that I would not be here today. So that's, to me, is very interesting. But what is the context? There may be people who have not heard me speak before, but all of my discussion is in context. And that context is a global system of white supremacy. And I will borrow the phrase from Neely Fuller, a gentleman in Washington, D.C., who opened my eyes to another way of looking at black people's problems. I met Mr. Fuller in 1967, and I heard him say that racism was not about economics. And since I had thought that racism was about economics, can I ask the people, please, if the little children, try to get them to be quiet, because I'm trying to think about this very important message. That I used to think that racism was about economics, and after I had read and considered myself a Marxist and thought very deeply about that and read everything about that, it did not seem to answer the questions that I had, and I was looking for answers to the problem of racism so I could help black people who were mentally disturbed get better. So I was looking and looking and looking beyond the issue of economics. And I heard this gentleman say that racism had to do with people who classified themselves as white, maintaining control and domination over people who were classified as non-white.
Let me know if you
And
can hear
Mr.
me.
Fuller maintains that if you don't understand that, every single other thing that you know will only confuse you. That if you don't understand racism in that context, then every other thing that you understand will only confuse you. And as a result of being exposed to his work back in 1967, I wrote the paper that some of you may be familiar with, The Crest Theory of Color Confrontation and Racism. And what I said after hearing him say that racism is about people who classify themselves as white, maintaining control and domination over people who they classify as non-white. That's all the black, brown, red, and yellow people. So as a psychiatrist, I raised the question in my mind, why would that be so? I didn't have a quarrel with the fact that it was so, but why would that be so? And I came up with the concept that it is so because whites constitute 1/10 of the people on the planet Earth, if not fewer, and that the black, brown, red, and yellow people are 9/10, if not more. And that the 9/10 are genetically dominant to the 1/10 whose skins are white, who are genetic recessive. The genetically dominant people are dominant in terms of their skin coloration, which makes black, brown, red, and yellow. And the pigment that makes those colors is called melanin. It is a black pigment. If you have gobs of it, your skin looks black. If you have less, it looks brown. If you have less, it looks red. If you have less... If you have less, it looks yellow. Most none, the skin appears white. But the ability to produce this pigment is genetically dominant. So that means that black plus white equals colored, brown plus white equals colored, red plus white equals colored, yellow plus white equals colored. Now the meaning of this white skin wishes to survive. It therefore has to dominate all the people who could cause white genetic annihilation. That is the meaning of racism. Racism, in other words, is a global system of behavior that is for the purpose of white genetic survival on the planet Earth. This is quite different than we have been accustomed to looking at it. We have said it's all about economics, and you'll get over. It's not quite as simple as we used to think that it was. That Mr. Neely Fuller is the first person to have said that we are dealing with a global behavioral system. We are not just dealing with segregation, discrimination, that you cannot sit on a particular toilet, that you cannot live in a particular neighborhood, that you cannot go to a particular school. That is the superficial aspect of the problem. He said the reason is that there has to be white domination, period. That all over the planet Earth there has to be domination by people who classify themselves as white. Mr. Fuller went forward, and let me just say here, I brought 5 copies of his book, and so maybe somebody wants to buy one from me. If not, I can tell you how to get them. But he said that the system, this behavioral system, for the purpose of white genetic survival, that the system is carried out in all areas of people activity. It is carried out in economics. It is carried out in education. It is carried out in entertainment. It is carried out in labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Do you get the picture? This is quite a different picture than somebody isolating economics and saying that's all that it's about. Or somebody isolating the area of education and saying that's all that it's about. Or somebody else isolating the area of law and politics and saying that's all that it's about. He said, no, it is a global system of behavior that encompasses all areas of people activity for the specific purpose of white domination, which I, in my work, translated it into white genetic survival. The reason that Malcolm X was killed, because he was talking about maybe force and the bullet. But the critical question, Dr. Martin Luther King was also killed. And he was talking about love and nonviolence, but he was killed. And see, you have to answer questions, well, why? Maybe I can understand why Brother Malcolm was killed, but why Dr. Martin Luther King? That if you understand racism at the level that I am discussing it here, you will understand that Dr. Martin Luther King talked about love. And if everybody got in the pot, white plus black, brown, red, and yellow. This is a smart class. That because the issue was not simply economics, that the fundamental issue was white genetic survival, and love would negate it. I see that you're following me. That because we are talking about something different. Is there an eraser? Because we are talking about white genetic survival, It helps us understand some other things that have seemingly puzzled us.
Listen to the queen.
If it is about economics, why destroy the black man and let the woman go? See, we have to answer that question. Why are black men filling the prisons? Why are black men on the corner with alcohol or drugs? Why are the black men unemployed to the level that they are unemployed? That question has to be answered by any description of a system. If you say, well, this is what it's all about, then your answer about what it's all about has to explain it. The reason that black people in general are under attack, and that black men in particular are under attack, is because of the fundamental issue of white genetic survival. Can women cause white genetic annihilation? Let the A students answer. See, you have to think about everything. You have to think about everything that you already know. No, the women are not an equal threat to white genetic survival.
Man, we talk about this all the time, family.
Women are not an equal threat to white genetic survival because women cannot force sexual intercourse. Are you with me? Yeah. See, it's silence like somebody saying women are not equal. No, everybody's equal. But we do different things. Okay? If a woman tries to force a man to have sexual intercourse, pull your M16 rifle. Okay? And say you better, right? The man will lose his erection. See, you cannot force sexual intercourse. For that reason, in the framework of a problem about white genetic survival, I said this is the fundamental problem. And because this is the fundamental problem, and because women, whether they are white, brown, black, red, yellow, cannot force sexual intercourse, but men, whether they are white, black, brown, red, and yellow, can force sexual intercourse. And mind you, I'm not talking about rape. You see, I'm not saying that black men are rapists. I'm only saying that the anatomy of the human male is such that he controls the sexual relationship. So that because white men had gone all over the planet and imposed themselves sexually on all of the black, brown, red, and yellow women, the thought was then, well, what if the black, brown, red, and yellow men, and here's Europe, what if they all decided to descend on this? You see, then there would be white genetic annihilation. So that if the fundamental problem is that there has to be white genetic survival, then the problem becomes both the male and the female, but much more so the male than the female. Now, many people use the word apartheid, and when they use that word, their brain computer jumps over to South Africa. And they say, we must do something about apartheid over there somewhere. But I advocate not using words that confuse the brain, but using words and phrases that clarify issues. Apartheid is a word that means white supremacy. It means that the 22 million black people must be controlled by the 4 million people who classify themselves as white for the purpose of white genetic. Are you with me? Yes. For the purpose of white genetic survival, not for the purpose of economics. This is absolutely essential that black people everywhere begin to understand this issue. It is our fear that causes us not to face it.
Yes.
Okay? Now, because of the issue of white genetic survival and its very specific attack on the male, we have what we call the collapse of the black family. Why? Because it takes a male who is a breadwinner, see how quiet it got, and a female who can nurture children to make family. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Don't let anybody tell you that family equals female and children. Because in a very short time you will have a feminization of the male. In the next little while you will have bisexuality. And the next little while you will have homosexuality. And now we have an epidemic of bisexuality and homosexuality, whereas in Africa we had none.
Thank you so much.
So that if the male is knocked out, you have, like they would say, damn near the defeat of the people. Okay, so we have that. See, don't get nervous. See, if whatever football team plays for New York, when they're defeated, they're defeated. Whatever basketball team, when they're defeated, they're defeated. And they have to know we lost that tournament. They have to know if they lost the last 10 tournaments. So, well, let me just tell you for the people who haven't heard before. But such things as people who classify themselves as white, saying the blacker you are, the uglier you are. So that all black people line themselves up. If you're black, stay back, brown, stick around, yellow, mellow, white, right. Is that correct? The reason we learn that before we learn how to read is because of the issue of white genetic survival. The more color you have, the more of a threat you are to white genetic survival. The less color you have, the less threat. So that the people have to line up and be oppressed relative to skin coloration. At the same time that we are told and we believe the darker you are, the uglier you are, the people on the other side of the track tan themselves. And that sun tanning process is about having the ultraviolet rays of the sun bombard the cells in our skin called melanocytes. And these melanocytes' job is to produce the black pigment melanin. White-skinned people have very little, if any, melanin because they have the genetic deficiency state of the absence of the enzyme tyrosinase. Tyrosinase is necessary to make melanin. The absence of tyrosinase or having very small quantities makes the skin appear white. Ultraviolet rays of the sun bombarding melanocytes that have tiny bits of tyrosinase can go forward to produce melanin, but they take the chance of getting cancer. They have said they don't mind having cancer as long as they're a good-looking corpse. Because of the problem of white genetic survival, it influences every single thing that we do. Very few people realize that ball games are about white genetic survival. I wrote a paper in 1976 called The Symbolism of Ball Games in the White Supremacy System and Culture.
The ISIS papers.
Those people who've heard me talk
Great
before
book.
know what it's all about. Maybe some people
Bought
don't.
it for my lady.
There are
Great
two series of ball games under white supremacy. Somebody say national and American? No. The two series are big brown and small white. Balls we're talking about. Big brown footballs, basketball, bowling balls, soccer. Now, so the soccer ball looks white, but you see those black patches? That means it's black underneath, so we put soccer. Small white golf, tennis, ping pong, baseball. I have said that the problem in the global system of white supremacy is white genetic survival, and that the people that can genetically annihilate it are males, and black males in particular. This is the problem. Does everybody recognize this? Okay. This is the male genitalia. These are testicles, colloquially known as balls. So that they play games with big brown balls and small white balls. And everybody knows that the men who play with the big brown balls are considered to be the most powerful. Is that right? Not the small white. Okay, but the most powerful white males play golf, where they got this long stick in between their legs, and they got that little white ball trying to make a hole in one. Now see, we're not doing this for fun and games, but I'm trying to help you understand a system that you haven't looked at yet with wide open eyes. In the white male's mind, and white males say that they are not men until they have had sexual intercourse with black women. Meaning so that they do what the black man does. So dropping that little white ball in a hole in black Mother Earth symbolically makes that statement. But, just like the big brown balls the football goes into some white upright legs, the basketball goes into a white net. Ooh-wee, right. You see, so that when the black man becomes proficient and dominates those sports, it's not an accident that he finds himself looking for a white female. But, you see, before the black men entered the game, you had white males who were attempting to drop brown balls in these white objects. Because the white male knows that the white female's ideal mate is tall, dark, and handsome. We are talking about the symbolism in the white supremacy system and culture. I understand that there's a problem in this part of the country.
Coach Dude, salute God.
With people in uniforms
I'm just giving a gem to the
brutalizing and
family.
killing black males. Not long ago, there were some
This
black
is Dr.
men who
Francis
were
Cress
chased
Wilson,
by a lynch mob.
exposing the system of
And
global
people
white
said,
supremacy.
what is happening?
A lot of what she's talking about we spoke
Why
on
race?
this morning, and we speak on every day I get on here. It's just a gem
What
for
is
y'all.
this? A return of racism? No, this is not a return.
Bronze flat power, salute God.
Racism, white supremacy never left. When I was a very little girl, I asked my grandmother,
Grab the ISIS papers, a
because
very
the older
good book.
people in my family, mother and father and grandmother, were talking about some black man that had been lynched. It was in black paper. And I asked my grandmother when I was as high as the dining room table,
Rest in peace
why
to the
would they
queen.
do that? And my grandmother said, because some people have to act ugly. But I grew up to understand that this is the problem. That lynching black men was all about the problem of castration. And castration was cutting off the testicles so that there would be white genetic survival. That's why black men had to be lynched. And that's why they are still chased down with guns today. Because look at this. This is the front view of male genitalia. This is the side view. I'm glad I've got this big
Absolutely,
school
Coach.
board.
She hit on all the points I
If you
usually hit
turn the
on.
lateral view of the male genitalia around 90 degrees, you get this. And what is this? A gun.
A lot of our own folks is the
This
new
is
age
called
KKK.
the great equalizer. Not by Francis Welsing. I didn't make any of this language up. This language is here in this culture on the part of males who are afraid that these black genitals can cause white genetic annihilation, so they say I must create weapon can do same thing. So it doesn't matter if I see a 13-year-old boy, I'm thinking unconsciously he can genetically annihilate me. Boom! And then I call it justifiable homicide.
Man.
So that instead of raising the question, why is there police brutality? Start dialoguing about white supremacy and what it is about in depth. So that you can say, I can predict that at any opportunity,
Listen to the queen.
that a black man might fall dead with no weapon. Because somebody got afraid about white genetic annihilation. When you discuss the problem at that level, you raise this subconscious activity to the level of consciousness. And the person will say, uh-oh, I will reveal my genetic inadequacy if I pull my gun on that black man. You see, but you won't do it by marching around with a picket sign. You see, when a gang of young men classifying themselves as white come out of a restaurant and decide that they have to kill some black man, their community says, well, boys will be boys, they didn't mean anything. Our community says, no, this is the historic problem. This is the fear rising to the surface of white genetic annihilation, the fear of white genetic annihilation. Even though the black men were looking for a telephone, they were not looking for some white female. But if we begin to explain and talk about, we understand what racism is at a deeper level, raising the discussion to another level, then we put something on the minds of people who feel insecure and inadequate. We give them an opportunity to gain some control over their behavior. So now I say that what we must have in mind is not yet the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King with everybody standing holding hands. That's a magnificent dream. But justice comes after injustice has been defeated. We cannot create justice in fantasy. So that the concept that black people need to have in their minds is a chessboard. I understand it's a little black boy who lives here from Kenya who is the chess champion of the United States in the under 14 category. Black child from Africa. So chess, ladies and gentlemen. But what is this game about? And why is this one of the most important games that is played in the white supremacy system and culture?
We live in zombie land, fantasy
What is the game of chess all about?
We bitching about the wrong shit.
That's one answer. Strategy is another. I want a very specific answer. B answers, B answers, B answers. You heard. He heard me say it, so that answers out.
Limited
The object of the game of chess.
This morning when I went live, I was talking about
Somebody
limited
said to
thinking.
checkmate the queen. No.
So when she said we can't find justice in illusion,
The object of the game of chess is checkmate the black king. Why is it so silent? The object of the game of chess is for the white king to checkmate the black king. In the game of chess, the white side always moves first. So that even though black is trying to put white in check, it is white that makes the offensive move, offense, defense, and black is moving defense, offense, and white is playing white genetic survival.
Man.
See, this is disturbing. Coach. I can feel the vibes. Don't
That's
like
why
this.
I'm so adamant about being on my shit every time I'm on live. Absolutely.
I can feel fear that's as great as my own.
That's right.
This room is filled with fear. Because a bigger problem than people who classify themselves as white, in uniform with authority to carry a gun, they kill 1/10 of the people than black men killing each other. And black men kill each other out of fear. Out of fear of the white king. This is a quiet of truth. If we can't deal with this, we can't deal with part 2 of this lecture.
We've had the teachers. We've had the feminine
Black
figures.
men hit women.
Masculine.
Because of fear.
We just ignorant.
Of the white king.
Listen.
And if you don't believe it, wait until he comes in uniform.
Right.
What's going on here? I didn't mean nothing.
We want to live in a fantasy world. We want to live in
Don't be ashamed.
Man, cuz.
See, don't be ashamed.
I'm going to try to make you as uncomfortable as possible.
We are a defeated team.
With nothing but truth.
Please pay attention to this. Because we can't go on to part 2 until we master part 1. And let me tell you something. I said a long time ago in Philadelphia that black men need to hold a conference, national conference. The conference is called together for black men to discuss. We are afraid of white men.
Come on now, make it plain. All right. Make it plain.
Now let me tell you what would happen. You would announce the conference, and silence would descend over the whole world. See, because some reporter from the New York Times might, well, what are you all going to discuss? We're going to discuss the fact that we're afraid of the white man. Well, then what are you going to do about it? We don't know.
Come on, God.
But this quiet would descend on the planet, and that quiet would be respect.
Oh, shit.
Because anybody who can talk about their fear is 1,000 feet tall.
Man.
See, not fear and crying, but simply we're afraid. We've been defeated. We're not sure yet how we're going to rise up from this. But we're studying the game. We're thinking about it. We have decided not to be children any longer because children need fantasy and games and we don't need it anymore.
Come on, y'all. What do I be saying? Come on. We know better.
Now the black men who rise to that occasion will dominate the scene. Because the men in the white collective cannot say, guess what, brother? We are afraid of you. Because you can genetically annihilate us. You don't need any weapon. God made you that way. We are afraid of you, and you outnumber us.
Come on.
And as a result of that, we have reduced you to smithereens. We have reduced you to the point that we can put you in a magazine. Where's that magazine?
You see the one with LeBron as King Kong with the white girl? You seen that one, right? I think it was Times Magazine, Sports Illustrated. Shit
I got it. I got it and you get it. Newsweek. You look at it. You
know no better. You can't
with
do
his
no better.
wife on
All
a
you know
sofa
is
with her
what you know.
legs
You
up
are
in the
limited.
air and
That's
her
what I was speaking
toes
on
in
this
his
morning.
ears.
Yes.
I can do it to you because I've defeated you.
Come on.
We just don't want to keep it a being.
I can
We
put
don't want
you
to say
on
shit like
television
that.
as a dwarf
We don't do better if we
and
don't
make
know
you
better.
like it.
Right.
We don't.
I can have a white man picking you up, full-grown black male who is a dwarf, and make you show it to your
But
children.
we've been new. This was the 80s. This was the
I can
90s.
take your most outstanding show on television,
Many of us knew. But we can't go
where
forward
everybody
if
looks
those
decent.
who know better are going backwards.
and I can take the little black girl and make her into a whore. So you can't look at it with decency anymore.
Once again, this is Frances Cress Wilson,
I can take one of your
R.I.P. to the
sisters
Queen. Get her book,
and
The
give her
ISIS
$30 million
Papers.
a year
That's a must-have.
and make
got
her
mine.
put green contact lens in her eyes.
Wear blonde weave, blonde hair.
You think it's about money? This is war.
This is war. I say this all the time. It's war.
You use money to fight a war.
Come on, man.
You use money
Maybe
to
they'll
fight a
listen to you,
war.
Queen. Maybe they'll
The
listen to you.
war is not about money. There is a difference. Very, very important. See, we don't understand what's going on. I'll pay you $100 million. Francis Welsing, I'll pay you $100 million. Put a yellow wig on.
Put that dress on. Rap about killing your folks. Kill your
Show
folks.
disorientation.
We'll give you $100 million.
See, somebody got a
Sign
yellow
you
wig,
and
don't feel
everything.
bad. You didn't
Promote you
understand the
and
game.
everything.
All of this is about, I can capture your queen and put her over here. I can capture your king and put him over here. When I checkmate you,
Come on.
I can do anything. Now just what would happen if we started to understand? What would happen if we said we're not going to be yelling and screaming anymore? We're not going to be walking around with signs acting like, well, why did this happen? No, we will have analyzed it ahead of time.
Yep.
What would happen if we said, well, now this problem cannot be dealt with song?
I'm praying to baby Jesus. Ain't gonna help you at all. Cut it out.
What would happen if the people began to worship an image that looked like themselves? Ask
They don't hear
this
me.
audience,
Maybe
there's a
they
lot
hear
of
you,
people in
Queen. They
here.
don't listen to me. I make them uncomfortable.
What
Maybe,
color is
maybe they
God?
listening to you, Queen.
Does God have a color
No.
in the minds of most non-white people on the planet?
It's a black man. It's sweet baby Jesus. It's the one of your oppressor.
Since there's confusion, does God have a color in the minds of most of the non-white people on the planet? And what is that color? White. See, now there'll be some people that say, let's take a little test.
Let's take a test.
We're all going to be very quiet. And I'm going to say a word, and I want everybody to track the image that goes through their brain computer instantaneously, because you're working on melanin, okay?
This is part one. We're going to do part two tomorrow.
The word is Jesus.
Sweet baby Jesus.
Okay, and the question that goes with the word.
Part two tomorrow, y'all. Part two tomorrow. I ain't want to say too much. This wasn't for me. This was for y'all. A small gem for today. Her name is Frances Cress Wilson. We're going to do the same thing tomorrow at 4. For me right now, it's 4 o'clock, 4:49. So we're doing it at 4 o'clock tomorrow. We're going to do part 2 of Frances Cress Welsing, author of the ISIS Papers. Great teacher on psychology of the foreigner and self. This is what she does. She does more than this, but it's called Exposing the System of Global White Supremacy. Now, mind you, family, white supremacy only exists as long as you feel inferior. If you do not feel inferior, white supremacy cannot exist within your reality, within you. Remember that, though. So tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I'm coming back with part 2. Of course, we're doing the morning streams, but this was for y'all. I'm showing you, I'm doing what I do. I'm pushing the narrative. I'm pushing the line. I'm pushing us to think, to excel and progress and exceed the limits that we've been thinking and the perspectives that we've carried. So tomorrow at 4 o'clock, Frances Cress Welsing part 2. This was just a midday game for the family out there. I'll be here in the Wake and Bake. Peace, y'all. Make sure to hit the likes. I ain't saying all that shit. Y'all know what to do, man.